Good evening. History unfolded at the Capitol this week. In partisan rancor, it narrated our times. Republicans and Democrats traded insults, sparring over articles of impeachment and the Inspector General's report about the Justice Department's conduct during the Russia investigation. Yet amid this bare-knuckle politics and marathon hearings, the week was also punctuated by a bipartisan deal on trade, and the stock market soared to record highs after President Trump announced progress on a trade agreement with China. But the road to this Friday night was paved with fury.
You're going to try to overturn the result of an election with unelected people giving testimony?
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman has been warned before. He cannot simply yell out and disrupt the committee.
This is the problem. This is why people don't like us. This is why people are having such a terrible opinion of Congress.
The president committed the highest crime against the Constitution by abusing his office, cheating in an election, inviting foreign interference.
Fights continued on the campaign trail, and I traveled to Hershey, Pennsylvania to cover President Trump as he rallied thousands in that battleground state.
Now that the Russia witch hunt is dead, a big, fat, disgusting fraud, the congressional Democrats are pushing the impeachment witch hunt having to do with Ukraine. But that's already failing. You saw their so-called articles of impeachment today? People are saying they're not even a crime.
For reporters and the nation, it was often head-spinning. It was also important, and the seriousness of this moment cannot be overstated. Joining us tonight, Peter Baker, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times and co-author of Impeachment in American History. Karin DeMarzian, Congressional reporter for The Washington Post, focusing on national security. Jake Sherman, Senior Writer for Politico, co-author of Playbook and co-author of The Hill to Die On. And Darlene Superville, White House reporter for the Associated Press. On Friday morning, the House Judiciary Committee passed 2 articles of impeachment, each on a 23-17 vote along party lines. A floor vote in the House is now expected next week. Jake, what does that floor vote look like when you look ahead to next week? Speaker Pelosi, is she whipping her members? Does she expect defections?
It's going to look very partisan. We don't anticipate any Republican. We're certain no Republicans are going to vote to impeach the president. We believe a handful of Democrats will vote with Republicans against impeachment. Nancy Pelosi says with certainty that she's not whipping. This is a matter of conscience, but they're very aware, obviously, of who's voting where, what problems she might have, and Republicans are whipping. They are trying to keep their troops in line with the president against these charges. And it's going to be very charged. It's going to be something the president certainly, as everybody here could attest to, watch very closely. And at the end of the day, politics are what they are, but the president's going to be impeached by the House of Representatives, and that's a certainty. And that begins a whole new phase, which is the Senate trial.
Karin, why did the Democrats decide to do these 2 specific articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress? What happened to bribery? What happened to looking at the Mueller probe?
Right. I think that they settled on the 2 articles that seemed like they were the best legal charge to make. Abuse of power covering the president's actions in Ukraine, what we saw in the transcript and the testimony that came thereafter, and the obstruction of Congress being his refusal to let anybody really come to the Hill to testify or provide any documentary evidence. Everybody that did end up coming to testify did so basically brushing off those orders. And so that they feel like they have a fact pattern that can hold that up. If you start to get into bribery, which Nancy Pelosi used the word, Adam Schiff used the word, it gets a little bit squishy just because the bribery in the Constitution predates statutory definitions of bribery, so you could get mired in an argument about dictionary definitions, basically. And to do obstruction of justice opens up Pandora's box on all the Mueller probe stuff, which Congress didn't investigate themselves, which the president has already declared, exoneration from it, even though that's not really the text of the Mueller report, but would have been a more difficult case to try without having actually gone through that investigation on the Hill itself. So they decided to dispense with the obstruction of justice, stick with obstruction of Congress, not go into bribery, but talk about the acts that they, used in their rhetoric to describe as bribery, and just call it abuse of power. that's a smart legal decision, but it's opening them up to, as you heard, you just played a clip of charges that these aren't crimes. These are just, you could have anything fall under abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. Republicans disagree to some extent about whether that happened. And that's, leaving them open to that countercharge from the GOP.
Darlene, Jake reports that the vote is pretty much set inside the House of Representatives. So at the White House, when you're reporting for the AP and talking to your sources there, are they already looking ahead to a Senate trial? And what do they want to see from the Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell?
They're definitely looking ahead to a Senate trial because the Senate is more friendly terrain for the White House. It's controlled by Republicans. The House, where the whole process started, is controlled by the Democrats, and we know how they feel about Trump, pretty much. So they are looking ahead to the Senate and the Senate trial. The president has said he wants a trial. He's going to get one in January when lawmakers come back. We don't know much yet about what that is going to look like, but there seems to be a consensus building around something that's quick, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The president wants to call witnesses. It's unclear yet whether he'll be able to call the whistleblower, for example, or Joe Biden or Hunter Biden. It seems unlikely.
Jake said that the House Democrats are letting this be a conscience vote. What about the White House? Are they whipping Republican senators? Are they worried about cracks?
I don't think so, because Republicans have been pretty much moving in lockstep with the president on this issue. They've been, repeating his line that he's done nothing wrong, the call was good, and it seems unlikely that anybody would break from the GOP and vote against him. Of course, you never really know until the actual vote is taken, but it seems unlikely at this point.